إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة وخلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما أما بعد فإن أصدق الكلام كلام الله وأحسن الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار وبعد. There is no doubt, أيها الإخوة, that from the affairs that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that He has advised the awwaleen wal akhirin, the first and the foremost generations and the latter generations, He has advised all of them with the taqwa of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَلَقَدْ وَصَّيْنَا الَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلِكُمْ وَإِيَّاكُمْ أَنِ اتَّقُوا اللَّهَ. That indeed we have advised those who we gave the book before you and yourselves that you should fear Allah. Ali ibn Abi Talib radiyallahu anhu, he defined taqwa as al-khawfu min al-jalil wal-amalu bil-tanzil wal-qana'atu bil-qalil wal-isti'dadu li-yawm al-rahim. He said that it is to have fear of al-jalil, to have fear of Allah Azza wa Jal, the mighty and majestic. It is to act upon the tanzeel, to act upon the revelation, that which Allah Azza wa Jal has sent to His messenger, that we act upon it, and that we have it as our constitution and our dastur. He mentioned wal-qana'atu bil-qalil, that we are satisfied with al-qalil, with a little. Regardless of what Allah Azza wa Jal gives us, we are satisfied bihamdillah. Wal-isti'dadu li-yawm al-rahim, and it is to prepare for the day of our journey. That is the day when we leave this dunya and when we stand before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala Rabbil Alameen. So this affair of taqwa, from its constituents, is that a person distances himself from the thing that destroys nations. That is that he distances himself from dhunub, distances himself from sin and from disobedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. For indeed the affair of the dhunub, ikhwan, it has destroyed nations, destroyed individuals, and caused some people to become extinct. Dhunub, sin. An individual on an occasion approached al-Imam ibn ul-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, and he said that verily I have a sin that I perform. And it is one that every time I try to get away from it, I make tawbah from it. Every time I try to abandon it, shaitan causes me to return right back to it. So advise me. And Al-Imam ibn ul-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, in responding to the question and in responding to this request, he wrote a book. And that book is entitled Al-Jawab al-Kafi the sufficient response. And within it, أيها الإخوة, he mentioned a number of the evil effects of dhunub and concentrated upon them. That perhaps that individual that is riddled or has and finds himself stuck upon the performance of a particular sin, if he reflects upon the evil effect that that sin has upon him, perhaps that will cause him to abandon it. If he recognizes that it is harmful to him, just as Al-Imam Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah, he mentioned one of the reasons people fall into sin is jahl, ignorance, and that is not that they are ignorant necessarily that that thing is a sin and it is sinful, but they are ignorant concerning the outcome of the action. Just as you will have, just as if one were to say to an individual who was hungry, this plate of food, it is filled with all of the delights that that individual loves, piping hot. But it is covered with cyanide, with poison. If that individual, after knowing that, continues to partake in that food, either he is ignorant concerning the harm of cyanide upon his body, or he doesn't actually believe that cyanide is in it. And so Imam ibn ul-Qayyim, he lists and mentions the evil effects of sin. From the things that he mentioned, rahimahullah ta'ala, is that from the evil effects of sin is hirman al-ilm. That is, that a person is prevented from knowledge because of the sins that he performs. Since knowledge, ayyuha al-ikhwa, is nur, is light from Allah Azza wa Jal. And that light is something that Allah places in the heart and the qalb of an individual. And that heart, if it is filled with darkness, then there is no place in it for that light that Allah Azza wa Jal has revealed upon His creation. Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he saw from his student, Al-Imam al-Shafi'i, that he was bright, and that he was astute, and that he was a strong student of knowledge, he said, verily I see that Allah Azza wa Jal has given you something. Allah Azza wa Jal has blessed you with something special. And so do not put out the nur and the light that Allah Azza wa Jal has placed in your heart with sin. On an occasion, Imam al-Shafi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala, he performed a particular sin. And that is, as some of Ahl al-Ilm mentioned, he saw and looked upon the ankle of a woman. And so it caused him, and it affected his memory, to the extent that he made mention of this to his Shaykh, Al-Imam Waqi' ibn Jarrah. Imam Waqi', he responded with some lines, rather Imam al-Shafi'i himself responded with some lines of poetry based upon the advice of Imam Waqi'. He says, شَكَوْتُ إِلَى وَقِيعٍ سُوءُ حِفْظِي فَأَرْشَدَنِي إِلَى تَرْكِ الْمَعَاصِي وَقَالَ إِنَّ هَذَا الْعِلْمِ نُورٌ مِّنَ اللَّهِ وَنُورُ اللَّهِ لَا يُعْطَاهُ عَاسِي. He said that indeed I complained concerning the fact that I was unable to memorize to Imam Waqi', and he guided me to leaving sin, and he informed me of the fact that knowledge is light from Allah, and Allah Azza wa Jal does not give His light to a sinful person. So the first of those things and the evil effects of sin is hirman al-ilm. That is, that a person is prevented from knowledge. Imam ibn ul-Qayyim mentioned from the evil effects of dhunub is hirman al-rizq. That is, a person is prevented from sustenance. He strives day and night, seeking sustenance, seeking rizq. Things don't seem to work out for him. Why, Ya Abdullah? Why? Ya Amatallah? Why is it? Why is it that these efforts that we put in to try and obtain rizq and obtain the wealth that we seek to make our affairs better and the affairs of our family, why is it that we don't seem to be able to benefit or make it? Why is it that our efforts don't seem to be successful? It could possibly be that this hirman has affected us. That is, that we are affected and prevented from risk on the basis of the sins that we perform. Those sins that we see to be light and irrelevant. Those sins that we perform so regularly that it is as though it has now become a habitual affair that we don't consider harmful at all. Similarly, Imam ibn ul-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions from the evil effects of sin is wahshatun fil qalb. That a person, when he performs sin, he has within his heart a feeling of wahsha, that he feels, his heart feels an emptiness. His heart is affected by that sin. Internally, he feels an emptiness within himself, within his soul. He feels something is lacking, something is missing. And that wahsha could possibly be, ikhwan, as Imam ibn ul-Qayyim mentions, from the evil effects of the sins that we perform. This wahsha and this emptiness that we feel, this void that we feel within ourselves. Similarly, he mentions from the evil effects of sin, wahsha فيما بيننا وبين الناس. فيما بيننا وبين الناس. That there is a void between ourselves and the people. Another one of the evil effects. That is that we feel something from distance between the people. We feel that between ourselves and the people is something again that is missing. There is a void. When we were once close and together, and how our hearts were bonded and united, now there is something from distance. And we will blame many other factors. We may blame the characters of those brothers, or that brother, that individual, or that sister. We may blame the argument that we had. We may blame the weak salam that we felt that he gave to us. Brothers and sisters, we should know that those are byproducts. Those affairs are byproducts. The reality is that wahsha and that distance and that void that we feel between ourselves and some of the people, ikhwan, it is from the evil effects of sin. It is from its evil outcomes. Similarly, Imam ibn ul-Qayyim, he mentions from the evil effects of sin, ta'asir al-umur. That is, from the evil effects of sin is that our affairs become difficult. Our affairs become hard. When we pursue, regardless of what it is we pursue, it may not necessarily be an affair related to wealth. Regardless of what it is we pursue, our affairs become difficult. Our affairs become hard. It could be marriage. It could be business. It could be that which relates to the establishment of marital affairs or the affairs within the home. Our affairs, we have ta'asir. We have difficulty within our affairs. And that again, ikhwan, is from the evil effects, ikhwan, of the sin. Similarly, he mentioned from the evil effects of sin is something from gulma, something from darkness that a person feels in his heart, and it likewise manifests upon the wajh, upon the face. Sin, ikhwan, it has a physical effect likewise. It is something that we see upon the face of the individual. And the sinful person may possibly recognize it in his own face. His face once looked radiant, once looked bright. He once had a nur and a light within his face that the people could see. And so he comes across an individual that he hasn't seen for many years. And he says to him, "You look good. Your face looks bright. You look radiant." And he himself may not even recognize that in his own face. But when he falls into sin, when he falls into dhunub, when he disobeys his Lord, and when he disobeys Allah Azza wa Jal, from its evil effects is that brightness and that radiance is stripped from his face. And so his face, after once being bright, it looks dark. After once being radiant, he looks dusty, dull. That, brothers and sisters, is similarly from its evil effects. He likewise mentions, ayyuhal ikhwa, that from the evil effects of sin is weakness that overcomes his heart and his badan. Weakness that overcomes his heart and his body. He becomes physically weak. He loses the firm resolve that he once used to have. Physically, he feels the effect of sin upon himself. And so he used to be strong. He used to be fit. Now he feels aches and pains. He used to be muscular. He used to physically feel strength. Now his bones ache and he feels weakness. That, brothers and sisters, again, is from the evil effect of dhunub and disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Similarly, from its evil effects is that a person, ikhwan, he has hirman as it relates to ta'ah, as it relates to obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal. He loses the zeal, he loses the gusto for obedience. He was once a person that would race towards doing good. Now he can't wait to do evil. Now he can't wait to disobey Allah Azza wa Jal. Now he waits for the opportunity, the first opportunity that he can get to perform those sins and to disobey his Lord. And without doubt, ikhwan, this is from the evil effects of sin. From its evil effects, Imam ibn ul-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions qasr al-umur. From its evil effects, similarly, is that sin shortens one's life, causes his life to be shortened. He mentions, just as there are certain acts of obedience which, if one performs them, like sillat al-arham, tying the bonds of kinship, if one performs them, it causes his life to be lengthened. And whosoever wishes, as the Prophet ﷺ, he mentioned, for good mention to be left behind him, and for his life to be extended, فَلْيَسِلْ رَحِمَهُ, then let him join the bonds of kinship. He mentions, just as there are certain good deeds that cause his life to be extended, similarly there are certain sins which, if they are performed, they shorten one's life. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Similarly, from the evil effects, ikhwan, of sin, is that it removes, when a person performs those sins, the desire for obedience, and it causes that individual to incline towards more sin. It breeds more sin. Sins that he was not performing, sins that he was not involved in, he now inclines towards, he now thinks about. It now occurs to him that perhaps I should do such and such. And since I am already doing such and such, then I may as well do such and such. He now leans and inclines towards the performance of other forms of sin. Similarly, ikhwan, from the evil effects of sin, Imam ibn ul-Qayyim, he mentions, is that we have hawan al-abd fi aynillah. That is, that the servant becomes irrelevant in the eyes of his Lord. That, ikhwan, is from the worst of the effects of sin. That the servant becomes irrelevant in the eyes of his Lord. And we seek refuge from such an evil effect. That our Lord and our Mawla should consider you nothing, should consider you irrelevant, after you were from the most obedient of the creation within your time, and from those who were performing good deeds, drawing close to Allah Azza wa Jal, to the extent that Allah Azza wa Jal loved you. That servant now becomes irrelevant in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and we seek refuge in that. We seek refuge from that. From the evil effects of sin, ikhwan, Al-Imam ibn ul-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentions from its evil effects is that the servant likewise becomes irrelevant, and he is humiliated by the creation themselves. They once used to have respect for him. They once used to honor him. They once used to look up to him. They once used to show him respect. They once used to listen to his advice, listen to his words. Now they consider him irrelevant. Now they couldn't care less concerning his statements and his speech and his advice. Now they would rather see that he was dishonored, and they would rather see that he was made low. Evil effects, ayyuhal ikhwan. One of them should be sufficient in turning us away from sin. One of them, and he mentions a number of other affairs, ikhwan. From them, fasadul aql, the corruption of one's aql and one's intellect. His intellect, once upon a time, was in accordance with the nur of Allah, the light of Allah, the deen of Allah. Now his intellect becomes corrupt. Now his intellect is perverted. It is affected. Similarly, he mentions from that ru'b, fear, that enters the heart of the sinner. All of these evil effects, ikhwan, we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from them. We should know that the performance of these evil deeds, as irrelevant as we may see it, the Salaf of this ummah, they used to say that I know when I've disobeyed Allah Azza wa Jal, because I can see it upon my riding beast, and I can see it upon my ahl, upon my family. He sees and notices the difference. His riding beast doesn't act as it used to act. His family acts differently towards him. His children act differently towards him. All of that being from the evil effects of sin, ikhwan. And so we seek refuge in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from that. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal to preserve us upon ta'ah, to preserve us upon obedience, and to cause us to learn and study and understand how and what Allah Azza wa Jal considers obedience to Him, and to remain steadfast upon that. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Bismillah walhamdulillah. Wassalatu wassalamu ala Rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala wa ba'd. Indeed, ikhwan, anyone who reads the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and studies that which Allah Azza wa Jal has mentioned to us, looks at the outcomes of previous nations, Allah Azza wa Jal informs us concerning the affair of a number of nations, ikhwan. Some of them continue to exist. Some of them have been destroyed. Those nations, brothers and sisters, when we look and we study the book of Allah, there are certain questions that we should ask. And even as it relates to our forefathers, and that which touched them from shar, that which touched them from evil, we should ask ourselves some questions. What is it that caused our father Adam and our mother Hawa to be expelled from Jannah and to be placed upon earth in this dunya and receive from its trials and its fitan and calamities, as does their offspring? And what is it that caused Iblis to leave the realms of being from among the closest of the worshippers of Allah to Allah, from among those who were within the realms of the mercy of Allah Azza wa Jal, to becoming la'een, distant from Allah Azza wa Jal's mercy? What is it that caused the people of Nuh to receive the punishment of Allah, that punishment that engulfed the whole of the dunya, that punishment that caused water, as Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, وَفَتَحْنَا أَبْوَابَ السَّمَاءِ بِمَاءٍ مُنْهَمِرٍ وَفَجَّرْنَا الْأَرْضَ عُيُونًا فَالْتَقَى الْمَاءُ عَلَى أَمْرٍ قَدْ قُدِرَ وحملناه على ذات ألواح ودسر تجري بأعيننا جزاء لمن كان كفر. The statement of Allah Azza wa Jal that we caused and we made the doors of the heavens to open up with abundant water, and we caused the springs of the dunya to burst forward, and that water built up and amounted in an affair that was decreed, to the extent that the water, ayyuhal ikhwa, it topped the mountains and nothing from the earth could be seen. What is it that caused the people of Ad and Thamud to be destroyed with the destructions that Allah Azza wa Jal sent upon them? Allah Azza wa Jal mentions, وَأَمَّا عَادٌ. Allah Azza wa Jal informs us concerning Thamud. وَأَمَّا الثَّمُودُ فَأُهْلِكُوا بِالطَّاغِيَةِ. As far as Thamud is concerned, that it was destroyed with the taghiyah, with that awful cry, the awful sound. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them, ikhwan, with a sound. A sound that was so awful and intense and tremendous that, as some narrations mention, it caused their hearts to be split within their chests, to burst within their chests. As far as Ad, Allah Azza wa Jalla likewise mentions that they were destroyed بريح صرصر عاتية سخرها عليهم 7 ليال وثمانية أيام حسوما فترى القوم فيها صرعى كأنهم أعجاز نخل خاوية فهل ترى لهم من باقية. Allah mentions this, He sent upon them a wind that blew over them for 7 days, for 7 nights and 8 days. And so you saw the people there and after the wind was blown upon them and after the destruction of Allah Azza wa Jal, you saw them overturned as though they were prostrate, destroyed. كأنهم أعجاز نخل خاوية, as though they were broken date palm trees. Now, do you see any of them remaining? Allah Azza wa Jalla informs us of their affair. وأنه أهلك عادا الأولى وثمود فما أبقى وقوم نوح من قبل. That indeed He destroyed the first people of Ad and the people of Thamud, and none of them remained. وَقَوْمَ نُوحٍ مِّن قَبْلٍ, and the people of Nuh were destroyed before that. وَالْمُؤْتَفِكَةَ أَهْوَى, and the people of the Mu'tafika, يعني Sodom and Gomorrah, Allah Azza wa Jalla destroyed them by bringing their whole township into the skies, to the extent that the inhabitants of the heavens could see and look inside their houses. The angels that are in the heavens could look inside their houses. Then Allah Azza wa Jal sent their township back down and then pelted them with fire and brimstone and destroyed them completely, to the extent that we now have that high ratio of sodium in the Dead Sea. If you were to enter it, you would float. And people now go for excursion and vacation. What is it that caused the people of Fir'aun to be drowned in the Red Sea, to the extent that their bodies were in water, and Allah Azza wa Jal burns them day and night in the barzakh? What is it, ayyuhal ikhwah, that caused all of these nations to be destroyed, other than dhunub, other than the manifestations of their sin, other than the kufr and the shirk and the disobedience to Allah Azza wa Jal and the disobedience of the prophets and the messengers? That, brothers and sisters, is what each and every one of us must be aware of. What each and every one of us must ask himself: where am I as it relates to obedience to Allah Azza wa Jal? Where am I as it relates to my Lord? Where am I as it relates to disobeying His commands or obeying them? Where do I rank with my Lord? How am I? How does He consider me? The one, brothers and sisters, that stays away and avoids following his hawa, then indeed Jannah is his ma'wa. As Allah Azza wa Jalla has mentioned, Jannah is his outcome. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make our affair easy in this dunya, to make the affair of ta'ah and obedience to Him something that is loved to us, that we love that, and that our families love that, our wives love that, our children love that, that we recognize the evil effect of sin, and that we recognize, ikhwan, that our success in the dunya and our success in the hereafter is bi ta'atillah, is by the obedience to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Walhamdulillahi rabbil alameen, wa sallallahu wa sallam wa barak ala nabiyyina Muhammad. قوموا إلى صلاتكم يرحمكم الله.